Hello, Tech Pros, episode 263. Welcome to the podcast where we explore the opportunities, challenges, and anxieties that technical professionals and techpreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. This show is about the people behind technology and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com and about overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, David Fradin. Hey, David, how's it going?
Great. Glad to be with you.
Great, man. I am so excited to be able to talk to you. This is my second episode that we're recording in 2017. Just got back from a really long break, and I'm like so rested and energized and excited. And then I've been so looking forward to having this discussion because you have just amazing amount of experience, and it's just an honor to get to talk to you today. So I'm super excited. But first, before we get into it, let me introduce you to the audience. David Fradin was a classically trained product manager at Hewlett-Packard during 50 years that HP grew by 20% a year. Apple recruited him to bring in the first hard disk drive on a personal computer to market. He soon rose in Apple's management ranks to the same level as Steve Jobs by heading the Apple III product line and providing the profits which helped fund development of the Macintosh. Oh my gosh, dude, this is amazing. Since 1969, he's worked in over 75 products and services at 25 small, medium, large organizations, a lot of startups covering hardware, software, services, internet, SaaS, mobile, advertising, you name it, he's done it for nonprofit and profit and policy and associations and political campaigns and everything in between. David has taught what is in his book to thousands of senior managers, product managers, product marketing managers worldwide at all kinds of companies. And David, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about these stories because they're amazing. They're amazing stories. Kind of looking through your book and talking to you a little bit before the show. What an honor to be able to talk to you, but it sounds like it's just been a fun career that you've had.
It's been up and down, and one of the key things that I noticed when I was writing Building Insanely Great Products, which, by the way, is on Amazon, and it covers the 6 keys to product success, which anyone that's trying to pursue a new product, to launch a product, manage a product in the marketplace, think about a new product, they've got to incorporate those 6 keys. And one of those keys, or a portion of that, is to make sure that you understand what your values are and what the organization you're working for or potentially could be working for, what those values are. And I found, as you mentioned earlier, I was there for part of the time, very small part of the time at HP, when they were following the HP way, which is their values, which was the core as to why they grew 20% a year every year for 50 years. And it wasn't until the late 1990s and Dave Packard had passed away and the company stopped following its values that the company started stumbling. It was those same values that Steve Jobs picked up on, I found in my research for my book, that he brought back to Apple. When he was asked what was wrong with Apple when he came back in 97 or 98, he said the company's lost its values. So in that research of the importance of having that foundation of values, along with a vision that combines every day to create a company's culture, I said, I wonder if the same concept applies particularly to myself personally. So I created a matrix, and the horizontal lines were the 25 organizations, profit and nonprofits, that I've been involved with over the last 47 years. Then the first column was, do they have values? And the second column was, do they follow the values? A lot of people just mouth the values but don't really follow them. And the reason the values are important in an organization is when everyone comes into a room to have a discussion or to make a decision, if one guy, for example, is thinking that the values of the company is just getting market share no matter what, and another person's values, they think of the company is profits and no matter what, there are conflicts between those things.
Right.
All you have to do is take a look at one little company called Volkswagen, who has a publicly expressed set of values which they did not follow.
Uh-oh.
And then the third column was, did those values match my values? And I was absolutely shocked with what I found. Without exception, when my values mapped into a company's values who followed those values, I thrived. When my values were in conflict with a company who either did not have any values or did not follow their espoused values, I had conflict, and I was either ultimately fired or I quit out of frustration or as a mercy killing. So anybody thinking about a career in this area should be thinking in terms of, what are my values? And then when they go interview an organization, that's one of the questions they should ask. What are your organization's values? And then quietly leave. And if they make you an offer, don't worry about it till they make you an offer, because you got no decision to make until then. Then sit down and do that analysis. And if it doesn't match exactly, then you're going to have difficulty later, and you'll be off on the street looking for something else, and you might want to just pass that opportunity by. If it's a case of the company you're starting or the company that you're working for, make sure you clearly understand before you start doing any product what the company's values are, what the company's vision is. That rolled up together equals the culture. And that's the basis for all the decision making through your product market strategy, through your product development, through your marketing launch, and your operations and your end of life.
Yeah, dude, it's all about knowing thyself, right? What drives Chad? What am I all about? What gets me excited? What gets me passionate? What do I care about? And what are the things that really, really tick me off, and they really annoy me, and they really just frustrate me from a moral perspective, right? And so let's make sure that all those things are in alignment. And it's not just about getting the job. It's about what products I'm working on. It's about what businesses I want to start. And I have to know myself, and all our audience, you got to know yourself before you go into this agreement, right? Because you're talking about, if you're building a product, it could be years of development. If you're working for a company, hopefully you're talking about a long-term career, not just, jumping in for a few weeks or a couple of months and being a consultant or a contractor. Doing something long-term takes a lot of coordination of people and companies and organizations. And you're absolutely right, Dave. It's all about starting with that value. So once we know what that is, once we're honest with ourselves and we start being honest with our potential employers or our product team, what's the next step? What do we do after that?
Well, then you start putting together the 6 keys to success, which I have as an acronym called SPICES, in honor of Spice Catalyst, my company. The S is the strategy. What's the product market strategy or plan that you're trying to put together? And that has a number of components. Actually, there's 24 different components in it. The second is P for process. Do you have a framework that you're following and a process for the development of that strategy and the product and the marketing and the launch of it? Mm-hmm. The I stands for information. Do you have the information available to make the decisions necessary in order to be successful? I'll give you an example. I was credited by RCN News back in, I think it's around 2003, for having shipped the first ad on a cell phone. And I did it on a Nokia phone because Nokia told me that they had the largest market share worldwide. Well, what Nokia didn't tell me is that their market share for cell phones was predominantly in Asia because of the price was low, mm-hmm. And a little bit in Europe. So I released a cell phone game which had ads in it, and immediately an outfit in Europe called GetJar, which has since moved to near me here in Silicon Valley, put my little game out. It was called Maui Mountain Biking, where you go rolling down Haleakala, and if you crash, a sponsorship ad would come up. And another thing I did was, what was it? Encore. It was a virtual cigarette lighter. So when you go to the concert and you want an encore and you forgot you stopped smoking, you don't have your cigarette lighter to wave around, you whip out your cell phone. And in 2005, the LA Times thought that was pretty cute, so they did a feature on it. But what I found out is that my relationships, my distribution and sales channels for cell phone ads was all in the United States. I didn't have any presence in Europe or in Asia, even though I had handled those areas when I was at Apple. And it would have taken too much effort to develop relationships with ad agencies and advertisers. But all my inventory, that is where I could place all my ads, happened to be in Europe and in Asia. It was a complete disconnect. So I didn't have the information that I should have thought I needed to have in order to make the right decisions. And that gets to another point that I talk about in my courses and in my books, and that is you got to have the right information at the right time in order to make intelligent decisions. The C talks about the customer, and one of the things that I've noticed over the years, and especially accelerating in the last 5 to 10 years, is the focus on the customer experience. Now, if you have Apple Care, for example, and you have a problem with your computer and you call them up and they don't know how to fix it, they'll find someone that will fix it for you and they'll call you back. Whereas most other organizations still, they'll say, oh, well, that's in a different department. You have to call this number. So you call this other number, and after you explained your problem for 5, 10, or 15 or 20 times, you either give up or blow your brains out. The focus is now on 100% customer satisfaction in any way, shape, or form. And then the fifth one is employees, and that's the training of the employees so that they have the competencies and the skills necessary in order to get the job done. And what I have found in the research for my series of books, which are about to come out from Wiley, called Foundations and the Successful Management of Products, that employees actually have, or the employees in total within an organization, have to have about 130 competencies in order to have a successful product. Very few people have all 130 of those competencies. Turns out that an entrepreneur needs about 135. And what a product manager does, which is what we call them here in Silicon Valley, or what I prefer to call them a product success officer worldwide at any company, they have to do about 130 of those things. So I have a blog article on my blog site at spicecatalyst.com entitled Entrepreneur is Just French for Product Manager. And it lists out all the competencies, the 135 competencies I was just talking about that an entire organization needs to have, and what needs to be embodied in that product success officer and that product marketing success officer, in addition to the entrepreneur themselves. And then again, the important thing there is make sure that people are trained up and know what they're doing at an advanced level, a medium level, and a basic level in order to be successful. Now, part of the reason I think you have many of your listeners that come from the programming, engineering, development side of the house, right, is many of these kinds of things like personas and market sizing and segments and value propositions and positioning and product portfolios and product features, advantages, and benefits and pricing strategy and budgeting and return on investment and product roadmaps. And then in the marketing area, understanding the customer journey, what are the differences in the different markets and cultures that you're sending it to, messaging, promotions, packaging, bundling, media mix, distribution channels, training, service, and support, sales tools, sales plans, public relations, advertising plans, content plans, social media plans, metrics and analytics, not to mention the end of life, and then all the areas of operations of training, support, service, order fulfillment, and supply channels. Chances are in computer science school, you didn't cover much of any of those things.
Not much, right? I remember some algorithms. I remember some data structures. I remember memory management, but I don't remember anybody telling me about any of that stuff.
Yeah, I remember calculus and differentiation, but I've never used it.
Right. So why is this stuff so important? So we're talking about product development. We're talking about software development, whether it's software or SaaS or hardware, no matter what the products are. You talked about, the 130 different competencies that need to be involved when we're creating these products. Why is it so difficult? Why isn't it just like, hey, I crack open some code, I learn the newest language. What are we learning these days? Is it PHP? Is it Ruby on Rails? Is it Java? What are we doing? Okay, then let's do that. And let's learn a little bit of code. Let's build a thing and let's launch it. Like, doesn't that work for everyone?
No, almost never.
Almost never. Okay, why not? Let's talk about why it doesn't work. Why you need these 130 competencies. Why you need all these different segments in the different job roles in order to launch the product and make sure that you're doing it correctly.
Well, first, let me say that what you just described is typical amongst entrepreneurs, hackathons, and venture capitalists, particularly here in Silicon Valley. And they embroil it in the concept of ready, fire, aim. And if you're supposed to be firing to the south but don't know it and you're firing to the north, you're just going to blow yourself up. So by understanding the product market strategy before you begin development, you can help create in the mind of the developer what is the problem that needs to be solved. And what is it the customer wants to do? And what does the customer look like? And what's the key value proposition that they need? But if you go out there and do a ready, fire, aim, you'll do that. You'll run out of money and you'll be looking for another job, or you have lost all your money at that particular point in time. And I could give you dozens of examples of making that mistake over and over and over again. It's not that difficult to do all the things I just described. Mm-hmm. It just takes time. You got to buckle down and do it with an organized structure and plan over a period of time. And you got to have good critical thinking. It's not this get rich quick. It's not doing things like changing marketing to a new term, which has been hopping around as the hot thing lately, called marketing hacking or customer hacking, or just hacking itself.
Growth hacking, yep.
Growth hacking, that was the term I was looking for. That's marketing. And it's kind of called that because people think marketeers are just a little bit above in the evolutional scale than a salesperson is. Well, a salesperson's primary responsibility, and I'm not talking about used car salesmen, I'm talking about everybody else, is to clearly understand what is it that their customer wants to do, then match them with a product or a service that helps them get that done so that they're happy and they come back and buy something else. But if they're conning somebody as a salesperson, they're not going to last as a salesperson in that particular area for very long. And that same thing is true of a marketeer.
Right. So at the beginning, we talked about why the values are so important, and that is to know thyself so that you can be excellent to one another, right? And be in the right job or build the right products that are going to really inspire you and get you fired up and get you motivated to do the job. But then the second step is know thy customer, right? That's what we're really talking about here, is really understand and empathize with who are these people that I'm trying to serve? What are their needs? What are their biggest challenges? What kind of solutions would they enjoy? Would they love to throw down money and say, please take my money because I want that product, I want that service, I want that solution, and then really deliver something that's going to add value to them, that's going to solve that problem, that's going to get them, 10 steps further in their personal journey.
Yes, but it goes much deeper than just understanding your customer. Tell you a little story. It's not exactly known if that's true or not, but it's a good story to illustrate a point. Henry Ford allegedly was once asked what he did when he did his market research for the Model T Ford. What happened? And allegedly he said he went out and he asked people if they would like a car. And their response was, no, I just want a faster horse. Wrong question. The Dave Packard writes in his book, The HP Way, when we went out and asked people if they wanted a color printer. Now, keep in mind at the time, the only printers around at that time were black and white. People said, no, I don't want a color printer. Then they said, if we gave you color at no additional cost, would you be interested? And a few people started thinking, because back then we didn't have PowerPoint. We had 35 millimeter slides and a thing called a foil, or an overhead transparency. And we would take those things and we would draw on them with colored pens in order to illustrate points, which you can clearly do better with color. So he was asking the wrong question. In the same way, Kodak used to dominate the film business. They defined their business as film, moving film and still film, and they were scared to death that if they actually pushed digital photography, it would put them out of business. So they blocked it. Did you know that Kodak invented digital photography?
I did not, no.
In 1973. And they pushed them aside, and finally they just killed the whole thing. I was involved a little bit around, I think it was 98 or 99. I was handling the PR for Lexar Media, and we had licensed our digital film to Kodak. And while I was still handling their PR, shortly after, Kodak canceled their relationship and they got out of the digital film business entirely. Now that company's worth less than $1 billion when they could have defined themselves as being in the business of the capture, storage, retrieval, and display of images, and don't care whether it was chemical or electronics, zeros and ones doing that. The railroads also missed the opportunity to get into trucks and cars and roads and buses because they defined themselves as being in the railroad business, not in the transportation of people and goods business. So the bottom line is, what are the questions that you're asking? And we're still not asking the right questions about what our products are going to do. And here are the right questions. At first, you go out and you observe the prospective customer like a social anthropologist. You don't interfere in the scene in any one way, shape, or form. This is what Procter & Gamble does. This is what Intel has 100 social anthropologists on staff. That's what they do. So you observe, what are people doing? Why are they doing it? How are they doing it? Where are they doing it? What's standing in their way? What's it costing them? What are their pain points? Then you interview them one-on-one, not in focus groups, because you get all sorts of other dynamics going on, which doesn't help. And then based upon revising your interview form, you can then go out and find a representative sample of your target market. You could survey them, and then you could project that into a market or sales forecast for which you can use that data to go out and raise the venture capital or angel financing that you need. But if you don't know what people want to do at the fundamental level, so let me give you an example. Let's say today I live in Saratoga, California, and I want to go to downtown San Jose and have lunch. So, okay, that's the job that I have to do. Having lunch is the outcome-based innovation that Tony Ulrich at Synergym talks about. But what are the do's that are in between? Well, I got to get dressed. I got to figure out what clothes I'm going to wear. I have to go to my car, or maybe I could walk to the bus, or I could take the train if that was available. Then I have to figure out which direction I want to, or which roads I'm going to drive on. Where am I going to park? How far is that from the restaurant? Do I have a reservation? Those are all the do's that are involved. Mm-hmm. And I propose to you, there is no app out there where I could say, I want to go do this job of eating lunch at a nice restaurant in downtown San Jose. And it figures the whole thing out for me.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of variables involved. How much money do you want to spend? Who are you going to go with? What type of clothing attire? What are your allergy preferences? There's a lot of stuff that are not codified.
And that's pretty much of everything, of every job that everybody wants to do. So that's the key, is understanding that very, very clearly. And I've got a whole course on this, which is called Do Innovation, Design, and Value Proposition. It translates immediately into a value proposition. And it satisfies what Tony Ulrich talks about, and that is you have to find for a product 15 unmet needs. That is something that's not met by some other way of doing things, and or the customers are largely unsatisfied with the way it is done. And how do you find those 15 unmet needs? You go out and observe what they do. You don't get into a room and brainstorm. because Tony runs the numbers. If you do, you have to come up with 14 million ideas in order to vet that down to the 15 unmet needs. And I propose to you that nobody can do that in their lifetime or mine or everybody else's listening to this podcast combined. Therefore, brainstorming for trying to figure out what a product might be is silly and a waste of time. And that's another reason why roughly 40% of all products and services brought to market every year fail.
My goodness, I would have never guessed. I would have thought, if you had 100 ideas out there in the board, one of them is going to be pretty decent that you could maybe take as a first step, as a minimum viable product or a proof of concept, and then iterate on. And maybe it takes several iterations before you really land on the quote unquote right idea, the best idea. But first, is it more important to get things out there and get it in front of the market and have people give you feedback? Is that a completely wrong direction to go down?
Completely wrong. That's the ready, fire, aim.
Okay.
When you could go out and spend 10 hours with 40 people over a month, 10 a week, well, maybe not fewer than that, maybe over 2 months to 3 months, and find out from those 40 people that's part of your target market by observing them and then interviewing them about what they do. Now you've got a pretty good general idea of which direction you should be going, as opposed to ready, fire, aim. Cool.
So I know a lot of people who go into product development with some sort of preconceptions or some sort of, hey, I'm a typical user, so I'm kind of building this for myself, but I think there's a lot of other people who could benefit from this product or this service. And so they go into it with some preconceived notions instead of observing, instead of interviewing, instead of finding a sample and surveying. It's just like, I know what it needs to be. Let's just build it my way. Does that work, or is that completely wrong as well?
Well, that helps, but you need to amplify that with what HP did for its first 50 years, which is exactly what I just described. They called it, however, the next bench syndrome. So if some guy or gal had some bright idea for a new product, they would develop it. Then they walk over to the next bench and say, hey, what do you think of this thing? Could you use it? Will you use it? Let me watch what you do with it. So they were testing immediately the prototypes. But they didn't, okay, maybe they came up with a prototype from their own gut feel of something that they could use themselves, but they tested it and they iterated on that testing in an agile fashion very, very quickly until they finally built the thing up to that value proposition that was compelling. But it has to be more than one of them. It's got to be, like Tony talks about, 15.
Fantastic. Dave, we could talk about this good stuff for days and years because there's a lot of experience. There's a lot of questions that I have. Tell you what, let's bring you back for another episode on Hello Tech Pros to talk about maybe if we're, as an entrepreneur, as a startup person, if we're going to build our own app or we're going to build our own product or launch our own service, like what do we need to do? Let's get tactical in the next episode. Would you mind coming back for another episode?
Be happy to.
Fantastic. Before we go and leave this episode, do you have any final words of wisdom to share for our audience? Then the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
The best way is go to my website, sign up for my newsletter, go to LinkedIn and ask to connect with me. It's David, D-A-V-I-D, Fradin, F-R-A-D-I-N. If you want to start learning more, I've got a book out on Amazon called Building Insanely Great Products. If you do a search there, the book will pop up right away. It's the first in a series of 3 books under the Building Insanely Great moniker. And then I've got a series of 7 books in the process of coming out from Wiley, which is going to be used predominantly and could be bought by others, covering the entire breadth of the product management lifecycle, called The Foundations and the Successful Management of Product. The Building Insanely Great Products book on Amazon tells you what needs to be done. My courses, which are on Udemy, which are online courses, including workbooks, so that when you finish the course, you have a product market strategy. You've got a marketing plan or whatever you may want amongst the 5 courses that are there. And that and the Foundation series teach you not only what it is that you need to do, but also how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Awesome. David, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value this discussion, your in-depth knowledge, and your experiences that you shared with us today.
You're welcome. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. Until next time, Tech Pros, if you are a product manager, if you are a software developer, if you're in the business of building and launching products, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else, and we all have different roles and different contributions that we make on big teams, really start thinking about these questions, right? Think about who are the audience, who are the users. And if you don't have some of the answers, start asking your management, start asking the product managers, start, hey, can I get in front of them? Can I talk to them? Can I learn more about them? Can I walk a mile in their shoes to really understand what it is that we're trying to do and why it is that we're trying to do it? So we'll have another episode after this one with David Fradin, so be sure to tune in. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/263. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If this episode helped you out in any way, please leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you thought. iTunes reviews helps our rankings, which helps us grow the Hello Tech Pros podcast to a broader audience, which helps more technical professionals and techpreneurs build their career, build their products, and build their businesses. If you are a subscriber and get repeat value out of this show, consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon. The information on this podcast is free to everyone, but I'm giving you the opportunity to pay for the value you get out of it, starting as little as $1 a month. Pledge your support today at patreon.com/hellotechpros or visit hellotechpros.com/sponsor.